Hello, hello.
Here we go again.
We're back again. We've done it this week a bit quicker, so we're not late with posting our episodes. But yeah, we're back, and I think what we're gonna do this episode, we're gonna carry on the topic from last episode about 30s and what is 30s and how do we navigate it.
Yeah, because we had so many amazing feedback and questions from that last episode. It went a bit crazy, really, didn't it?
I know.
So many people were like, wow, I really resonate with that. And this has happened to me. And we thought it just might be quite nice to talk a little bit around those stories, because you and I definitely resonated with a lot of what people were saying to us too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a subject that it's really close to our hearts, and we've got so many friends and family and cousins and all sorts of people around us that are struggling at the moment with the dilemma of 30s and how, and even I've had conversations with people that are not 30 yet and they're just about, getting there, and then they're just confused. They don't know where they are in life. They don't know how it's going to be in their 30s. Their anxieties kind of escalated in a way. And I think it's important to touch up on little subjects that do come up in your 30s, and it's nothing to worry about. Obviously, it's a natural cycle. We're all going to get there eventually. But I think it's important to just have a little bit of heads up and see if that helps.
Yeah.
Our little, stories that we've had people sending in and messages, which is really, really nice to see people actually opening their heart to us. So thank you very much for that. That was really nice. But yeah, we'll touch up on some of the messages, and there's a really important topic, isn't it, today, that we're going to talk about.
Definitely. I think I just wanted to maybe start with what you just said then about that anxiety increasing in your 30s, which actually has been a really common theme that's been coming out with people messaging us. But like you say, when speaking to kind of friends and our own experiences, naturally you'd think, in one sense, you get a little bit more confident as you get older. We spoke in the last episode about maybe really knowing who we are and setting boundaries and protecting our peace. But I think what we didn't really cover actually was, at the same time, you can still be left feeling really quite anxious, whether that's like quite socially or not really knowing which way you should go anymore, or if what you've been doing actually still serves you. And that can lead to those feelings of worry, and that worry can just then escalate into all other aspects of your life.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also important to realize that we all change through different decades, and a lot of people seem to change, but then they're still not 100% about the person that they are, and they don't quite feel like they can fit in. They're not fitting in with their old friends, or neither with their new friends. They're kind of in that limbo stage, and it's hard because I think when you grow as a person, it's really important to kind of take a step back and realize what is it, who do I want to be, who's the person that I want to be, and make sure you stick with that. And if you change in different ways, don't try again because of, the pressure of society to kind of knock yourself back and be like scared because you're not fitting in with neither of the group of friends. Just give yourself time. It'll get there eventually. I just think a lot of people change and then panic because they can see the difference and they can't quite fit in. And then they kind of take a step back, and that kind of ruins their growth that they've done for years and years and years.
I totally agree with you. And I think where this is really highlighted quite a lot is in friendship groups, because your priorities change obviously when you have children, or if you've got a busy career, or you've got a partner, and maybe you don't spend as much time with one another, or you don't speak to one another as often as you would like. And, we all have those little voices in our heads, that stem from insecurities, our own insecurities that maybe stem from what's happening in our life right now, that could potentially be driving a further wedge away. Because, you know, you're absolutely right. People do change through different decades, through different years, depending on what's happened to them or their experiences. And you do move, you grow, you can change friendships, but it doesn't mean that, you know, anything specific has happened between you, or that, you know, one person doesn't want to be friends anymore. Or I think there's quite often a perception that if, you know, you don't feel a certain way about a certain friendship group anymore, it's, you know, because something big's happened. But I think communication is absolutely key. You know, you can start making up all these different stories in your head about, oh, well, they're different, or they've got a new friendship group, or they're living this amazing life and I'm just not that person anymore. And you can start to become really self-critical, feeling inadequate, that you don't fit in, when really, I guess, communication to get the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I think that's when, like you've said, I completely agree with what you've just said. I think it's important that when you are getting these thoughts through, to have that honest conversation with your friend, or whoever it might be. It might be a family member. It doesn't have to be a friendship group, because think about it, you know, relationships with families can be really tough. And I think as you grow older, what I've noticed, you find it more difficult with families, especially because you've grown into, you know, a woman, and you want your own life, your own way of doing things. And families, I think, more than friendships, they do tend to get involved a lot more and have a say and have an opinion, which is fine. Again, you know, you can listen to their opinions and take whatever you want to take from it, but at the same time, you do have your own life and you do have your own family, and I think it's important that you do prioritize that over any other opinion around. And it's the same with friendships. A friendship doesn't have to end in a bad way. It literally can end by purely you're just not resonating anymore, and you're sitting there and you're just not on the same level. And that doesn't have to be a negative thing, but at the same time, recognizing it puts you in a position where you've got a more clearer mind, and you can think about what you actually want, and you can think about who you want to hang around with. And I think instead of just sitting there frustrated because you're not quite having that relationship that you expected you will, maybe just have that conversation with that person and say, listen, I felt that in the last couple of months, we've been a bit distant, you know, what's up? Like, we need to talk about it. But when you don't speak about it, that's when all the problems creep in.
Yeah.
And it just gets worse with time. It doesn't get better at all.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, you can outgrow friendships, absolutely. And I think that's the difficult question, isn't it? Because quite a few of the responses that we had were, you know, well, I feel left out. But then on the flip side of it, you know, I just don't feel like I fit in anymore. And I actually think there's two different scenarios here, what we're describing. There's a scenario of, you know, life's just really busy, and actually I'm worried that I'm losing my friends because I can't keep up with them and we're not on the same wavelength. And that's where communication comes in, and making time and space for one another. And then there's the other side of this where you absolutely can outgrow friendships, and you are two different people because you've just gone on different journeys, and maybe the values that you held or whatever brought you together in your 20s or your teens just aren't the same anymore. And that's absolutely fine. Like you say, it doesn't have to end in a really bad way. It just has to be an acknowledgement that you've grown apart. And I think it's the same with relationships too.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important that when you do speak to your friends or family members, that you make sure that they're not taking it the wrong way. And then what I mean by this is when you genuinely go with an open heart to them and say, this is what's bothering me and this is what I think is happening. It's not an attack on you personally or the other friend. You're just genuinely speaking your mind. And I think that's really important, even for friends that do have people that will approach them in this way and say, hey, you know, something's not quite working over here. You know, try and sit then think about what they're actually saying, because they're not attacking you. What they're saying is that they want to have an open conversation with you to see where the cracks have happened, to see where you are in your life. Do you need any help? Is there anything that I can do for you? You know, everyone goes through hard times in life. And I think it's important to acknowledge, like, for example, a lot of the times in your 30s, most people have children or think of having children. Now their life will change completely. You're not going to be able to be that friend that responds, you know, to text all the time, or constantly in a funny mood, in a way of like, oh, let's have some banter. That doesn't happen, because there's other priorities in your life that kind of take the life away from you in a way. And I think children, even although having children is the most beautiful thing ever, they do exhaust you in the most unbelievable way. And even if you're the most active, proactive person, you will feel that massively when you have children. And I think that's important as women to acknowledge that. And also with my friends that have got children, I do understand that, because I've been there. So whenever somebody's saying I'm having a hard time, you know, the children doing this and that, and I've got no time for myself, I don't put pressure on them, because I do get it. But in the end, if you're on a different vibe, sometimes it's just better to just, you know, stay civil and just say your goodbyes. And you never know when you will collide again, and any friendship can start again. I just think that sometimes when there's too much going on and you can't quite come to a common ground, it's better to just give it a little bit of space and just give it that time that it needs for it to kind of flourish maybe in the future.
Yeah. So I think just kind of to pull all of that together, because like I say, there was a couple of different scenarios that come into us about that. I guess what we would say in that scenario, if you are in that situation whereby you are feeling a bit weird about your friendships, it's completely normal. We've all been there. I think we can definitely all resonate with, you know, feeling left out, or not feeling as though we fit in anymore, or just feeling really overwhelmed with what life is throwing at us, and maybe not having the opportunity to see friends or spend time with friends. And I guess our advice would be, you know, have a really good think about, well, what is it about this situation? Is it that actually we've both just been really busy and maybe not had the time, which is normal? And, you know, can we make the time? Can we have a conversation? You know, tell them how you feel. Or is this genuinely, actually this person is on a different wavelength, they're not really bringing anything to my life anymore? You know, there's definitely lots of examples.
Yeah, but there's also the stages in your life though, because there's stages where you cannot connect with some people, and it's hard in a way, because you think about it, well, somebody could be, you know, in a relationship but they don't have children. I'm just giving random examples. Or you might be single and you've got a completely way of, you know, living your life. Or somebody might have a family with loads of children, or financial problems. All of these things play a massive role in a friendship. So I think it's important to realize, where is your friend at that time? What's the stage that they're in? You have to understand that everyone goes through hardship in a different way. So if you maybe react in a different way with stress, for example, in a situation, your friend might not be the same. Your friend might think that that's absolutely fine for them and they can breeze through it, but you might not be able to breeze through it. And I think this is where, like you said, communication, honestly, it's like the best advice that we can give you. Speaking openly from your heart, not just speaking for the sake of speaking, genuinely speak what you feel. And then you probably are going to sort it quicker, in a way of, rather than beating around the bush.
But there's growth in that as well, isn't there? So there's actually growth in being honest and having those open conversations and saying how you feel, and an acknowledgement that actually life is different at different stages, and actually I'm here to support you. I'm here kind of with you, and, you know, we can move through this together, or we can't. And, you know, that's...
Or like, I value our friendship a lot. So regardless of the situation that we're in at the moment, it might not be great. I'm still going to be there next to you no matter what. So it literally comes down to whatever values and how much that friendship matters to you. Genuinely, it's what it comes down to. And if you need a little break, you need a little break. That's absolutely fine. It's like with anything, even with romantic relationships, sometimes there is times where you do need a little breather to think, to kind of reorganize your thoughts, to be able to know what you want moving forward. And, you know, a lot of people don't agree with it. A lot of people think, no, we don't agree with breaks. You know, that's unnecessary. Well, some people are different. And for some people it works. For some people it might not. It's just a personal preference, whatever works for you as an individual.
I think as well, there'll be people out there that are probably thinking, okay, well, that's all great, but actually I don't feel like I've still got any friends left, because maybe they've, you know, been so kind of wrapped up in their family life, which is absolutely kind of, you know, right. We're not saying there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, they've been so focused on giving their time and their effort into, you know, their family or their life, that actually they suddenly sit there and go, well, what now? You know, maybe children have grown a little bit. Maybe they've gone to school. I see this quite often with, you know, people whose children suddenly start school and then they're left with
the panic
of, well, what about me? What do I do with my life now? And actually, I suddenly feel really quite lonely. And that can be a really scary place to be, because you're left feeling empty and a bit vulnerable and exposed of, well, I've got to start now, you know, filling in some time or figuring out who I am and maybe making new friends.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think personally, because I need to point something out here, being lonely and being busy is two completely different things, because you could still be busy at home after your kids have gone off to school, because trust me, there's plenty to do around the house, around your kids' lives. There's always jobs to do, but it's not about being busy, because busy, you'll be busy. It's about how do you feel when your kids have gone. Do you feel all right? Are you happy that you've got your time and you're busy to do something in peace? You know, like, okay, I can have a full day of doing things around the house and things for the kids and organize and shopping and everything. But am I happy there in that moment, or am I lonely? Because that's the difference where you need to recognize, because busy, we all can be busy. But I think if you genuinely feel lonely, that's when you need to just maybe think about doing something for yourself, where you don't constantly feel like you're doing stuff for everyone else and you're leaving yourself out.
That's such a good point, because loneliness is really a root cause of quite a lot of mental health difficulties. And also, you know, you feeling lonely, like you just said, can lead to huge problems in your romantic relationship as well. Especially if you've got a partner that's been at work all day. There is nothing worse than, you know, being at home, being really busy, but feeling all alone, like you've just said. I can definitely resonate with you know, a lot of what you've just said. And actually having that thought of, well, they're socialising, they get to go out the house, they get to speak to adults and have adult conversation. You know, I'm just here picking up after everybody and doing the school run, and that can lead to really deep rooted kind of resentment in your relationship. And again, left unchecked, that can just fester. And, you know, you start to then, it plays on your thoughts, doesn't it? It plays on your mind.
Well, you get into a vicious cycle at that point. I mean, I think I can recognize that I've dealt with that type of resentment in my relationships. And I think it's nothing that it's uncommon. I think we all kind of resent our partners at one point. And it's, again, speak to them. Tell them, you know, I'm in a bad mood today and this is why, and this is, I feel lonely, I feel like I'm doing everything for everyone. Even if it turns into an argument, it's better to speak about it. It might not turn into an argument, because your partner might turn around and be like, do you know what, I understand. I'd hate being alone at home all day doing everything for everyone while, you know, you're out socializing with everyone and still working. And we're not taking the fact that you know, our partners go out and work and come home tired, but is the interaction with people, which I feel like a lot of mothers that stay at home at the beginning with the children when they're really little really struggle about. And this is why I recommend getting out, even if it's just for a little bit. See one of your friends for a coffee, anything that will help you get out of that loneliness feeling at home will make you feel better in the day.
And you can't even quite put your finger on it, can you? Because I'm just thinking now, even if, you know, you like you said, you've got loads of things to do, you see people, you're keeping yourself busy, that sense of loneliness is something that you can't quite put your finger on. Even if you go back to work and you're working full time and you have your family at home, you might not have anybody that understands or is in the same situation as you. And that can still leave you feeling lonely. So although you're surrounded by people, it's that loneliness that you can't shake away. And I think, you know, that there are ways in which you can tackle that feeling, because what we don't want is for that feeling to start to eat into that vicious cycle, like you said, because you then start to project all of those kind of loneliness feelings onto yourself, and it can turn into feeling worthless. It can turn into real low self-esteem, of that inwards projection of, well, I don't feel like I fit in, so it must be me. There must be something wrong with me. You know, do people not like me? Am I not, you know, acting in a certain way because I don't fit in here anymore? And that's what we absolutely don't want, because this is a really normal part and parcel of life, of the different stages of life. And it's really important that we're able to accept that things can change and they will change, and we do move throughout these phases of life really commonly and frequently, and it's about what you can do to take care of yourself at that moment in time. And you know, we talk about self-care and self-awareness because it's so important. It feeds into every aspect of your life.
I think people overlook that a lot though. I just think the self-care and the self-awareness, it's so overlooked in a way if people don't think it's important at all. And I've seen it all the time happening to people. And I just think, you know, when you're not self-aware of yourself, all of these issues will creep, like literally creep in, and to when really you don't expect it. And that's when it really hits hard, because you think, oh my God, I thought life was like this, and then all of a sudden this crippling anxieties come through and I don't know what to do with it. And I think you need to acknowledge your environment first, and then be self-aware that I might feel lonely. I'm feeling like nobody understands me. But look back of your situation and their situation and see if there's a link of understanding there, because not everyone will be at the same stage as you, and how can they understand you if they've not been in the same shoes as you? They can understand you to a certain level where they are, you know, compassionate and they listen to you and everything, but if they've not been there and experienced that, they can't fully understand you.
No, you can't.
And you will feel that energy from them, because it's so obvious when somebody's not being through the same thing as you that they can't genuinely relate to you. So I think first thing first, be self-aware of your surroundings and your situation at the time.
I think the biggest aspect of all of this for me is self-care. The biggest element of it is actually compassionate for yourself as well, because you're absolutely right. If somebody else doesn't experience what you've experienced, they can sympathize with you, but they can't really empathize truly with you. And I think it's having that compassion of understanding actually what is triggering those feelings of inadequacy within you. We all have our bias that we've built up throughout our own experiences. It's massively influenced by our childhood, but then it's also reinforced by our day-to-day experiences, and it builds this internal belief system that triggers that crippling anxiety, for example, that you've just mentioned. And you're thinking, oh, where's this come from? This has come out of nowhere all of a sudden. It hasn't come out of nowhere. What it's done is it's triggered your subconscious, whereby you may have been coasting through. It may well have all been okay, but then suddenly life shifts. You know, you've got a change in your circumstances, which is going to happen. And then it triggers that internal belief system where maybe in the past you've not quite felt like you've fitted in, or you've not quite felt worthy of meeting new people, or confident, or you've not had the confidence, or whatever it may be. It's important to recognize that it's just triggering an insecurity within yourself, and actually you've got to tell yourself, is this what's really happening right now, or is this just something that actually is tapping into a part of me that I've not quite healed yet?
I think I've mentioned this before in one of our previous episodes, and I think it's a massive deal. I think we all struggle with traumas from the past. You might call it trauma, you might not call it trauma, whatever you want to call it. There's always going to be something from your past that you've not quite healed properly. And what happens when you do go through stress, anxiety, problems in your life, health problems, relationship problems, it will come and hit you. And that's when you think, oh my God, something's happening, I'm depressed, this and this and that. It's, you know, it's triggering something inside of you that you're not quite comfortable with. So you've got to give yourself time to understand, what is that? What is that little trigger? And where is it coming from? Because you'll be, honestly, if you have an honest conversation with yourself, you'll know where it's coming from. You might not be able to say out loud because you'll be maybe anxious to express yourself in that way. But if you do have that chat with yourself, you will find where it's coming from.
Yeah. And, you know, we talk about trauma, and quite often a lot of people think that trauma is this big one-off event that happens to people. It can be, but actually more commonly I find is that complex trauma, which is the trauma of experiencing something fearful or frightening, or makes you feel inadequate and not, you know, a person repeatedly over and over again. So complex trauma could be something like a parenting style. It could well be, you know, how you've been brought up in an environment with your parents, how they treated you, what you were expected to be. It could be bullying. You know, it's those repeated experiences, negative experiences, that maybe aren't as big as to warrant as somebody saying a one-off traumatic event, but they're so prolonged and repeated over time that it leaves that lasting imprint on you that's still classed as trauma.
Yeah, I was just thinking about my childhood just then when you were speaking. You know, I was just having some flashbacks, and I was thinking my biggest one is, which I've noticed growing up, only when I started to understand myself and my childhood a little bit more, is, you know, when you're just sitting down relaxing and all of a sudden when somebody walks in the room, you feel like you need to stand up and do something. And that was, I kept like thinking, why am I like this? Why can I not just sit there and be like, yeah, I'm relaxing? Is there anything wrong? I'm just having a moment. Where I can't do that now. And it's from my childhood, where I was always needed to be seen like I'm doing something constantly for someone, or around the house, or helping, or being a good daughter, or to get the praise and everything. And I've realized that that's followed me in my adulthood, where now when somebody, it can be anyone, it can even be my daughter, it can even be anyone in the household, as soon as they walk in, I'm like, I'm jumping, and I'm doing things.
You got to be seen.
And I just think that that is so unhealthy, and I've recognized that, and I had to just say to myself, no, if I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing anything, and I'm sitting there and just relaxing. But that is a trauma response. That initial response of you getting that anxious feeling and stressed and having to get up, it's a trauma response from your past, where you've not quite healed that little side of you. And I think it takes longer to heal yourself when you're a bit older, because you're already got into your habits.
Well, the patterns are ingrained, aren't they? And I think it takes such a big part of you to actually stop and recognize that you can only control what's in your control. You can't start changing other people. We spoke about this before. Actually, and I'm going to kind of use your example here. So if you kind of thought about, keeping busy, actually, let's break that down. It's not that you think you've got to keep busy because you're doing things for other people. Actually, it's the fear of what others are thinking about you if you're not doing something. So that's the kind of the grey part in the middle here. It's not, oh, I've got to keep busy because I'm a people pleaser and I like doing things for people. Actually, it's the flip side of it. What will they think of me? Do they think that I'm no good, or do they think that, I'm worthless and I'm not contributing anything, so I shouldn't be here? And that's the insecurity, I think, that we've kind of...
Or you're not getting the praise that you usually get from the people that you love. And also my love language is doing things for people. I've noticed that. Like, I would go above and beyond for people, even with the little thoughtful things. I always would do it for everyone around me. And I think as soon as I mentioned, as soon as you're not doing that particular thing for someone, you almost panic. And I think that was the biggest pill to swallow for me, because it was hard for me to just be able to just think about myself for a second and not people please every 5 minutes, and think that I'm actually a human being and I do also require people to think about me as well. And I think that's hard when you've been used to most of your life to be doing things for people. And it's just the way I've been brought up, my environment was completely different to a lot of my friends, and it was very strict, and I always had to do something. I was not allowed to have the childhood that a lot of the kids have nowadays. I mean, I'm thinking about my children right now. They don't do anything around the house, and I'm just, but then again, that plays into the trauma of my life in my childhood, because I think, well, am I now spoiling my children too much because I don't want them to feel like I felt when I was little?
You're overcompensating for them.
So I'm trying to overcompensate to the point that they're not doing anything. They're not even helping around the house. And that's when I have to go back and go, okay, no, we need to have a balance here, because we can't go one way. If it's extremes, is not good. So we need to kind of bring ourselves back to planet Earth and just try and decide what's the balance, what works for each family. And that's helped me a lot. I think since I've decided that, balancing, the way I'm bringing up my children, it's really important. And yeah, if you want to spoil them. But at the same time, don't go overboard.
But I think what you just said there is such a fantastic example of everything we were trying to say, because I think quite a lot of people will be in that position and recognize themselves in that example. And I think what you spoke really, eloquently about was actually being able to recognize where that stems from. And actually maybe in the past, you've just carried on doing things for people, but what that's going to do to you in the long run, if you hadn't recognized it, your children are both off at school now, you could sit there with that crippling anxiety that we've been describing at the beginning, that feeling of inadequacy of, well, actually, who am I? And I've got to do this for my children, I've got to do that for my children, but oh, hang on a minute, they're independent and they're going off now and they're doing their own thing, and my partner's at work and I'm left in the house. It's exactly like what we were describing, the situation. But it's starting to break that down and thinking, okay, well, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel inadequate if I'm not doing things for people? Or why do I feel guilty if I try and do something for myself? And it's tracking back those patterns, maybe from childhood, maybe from previous relationships, and thinking, actually, that's why. And there's no saying that it's easy, once you figure that out, everything gets better. It doesn't happen that way.
It's a process.
It is a process, but the start is actually recognizing, and like you said, acknowledging, I am actually a person who needs looking after too, and needs some recognition.
And when I say looking after, it's not anything to do with anything other than emotionally. Because if you think about it, this has not got anything to do with materialistic things whatsoever. This is mainly the way you feel emotionally treated in your household.
It's validation.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because a lot of people miss the point here. It's, you know, like, for example, you could be, your partner could be off at work and you're at home with the children. So your partner is the main provider of the household. So, okay, they are looking after you and the children while you staying at home with the kids. But are they emotionally validating you, though? That's the biggest issue, which I'm noticing the cracks where start in partnerships. Because it's not good enough just to be looked after financially. But what happens emotionally? Because that's where you closed off.
Oh, I feel like we've got a whole new episode coming here. Are you codependent or independent emotionally?
Because that's the next question for the next question. Yeah,
because that's such a big thing. And I actually worked on a research project which looked into kind of mums at home. So, I mean, not just stay-at-home mums, but they were going out to work and whatever. But it was when you're doing your jobs at home, what is it that you want the most in terms of to improve your well-being? And like, you'd think, you know, just time on my own, you know, space to talk to other people. They did all come out like really highly, but the number one thing that people felt would impact their own well-being was actually an acknowledgement and a validation of just how much they do and their emotions in it all.
Yeah, I think personally, and I've been through my relationships fluctuating through these emotions. And as soon as I would validate my partner for what they do when they go off at work or whatever they're doing, and vice versa, they would validate me for doing my jobs at home or whatever I was doing, our relationship was always so much better.
The mutual respect.
It's just taking that time each day. It doesn't have to be an essay. You know, it can just be like, do you know what? I couldn't do this without you. And there's no way I could do this particular job because I wouldn't know where to start.
Can you imagine if somebody said that to you now, though? I'm just thinking of hearing those words myself and thinking, God, actually, I'd love to hear those words.
Yeah, and it's so simple. I know it's like, it sounds so simple when I'm saying it, but it is. Yeah. Why is it that we cannot validate our loved ones?
I've just, this is, we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about another thing as well. We'll come back and we'll remember these for our next episodes, because I think this massively then taps into, you know, if you've got a partner that goes out to work and maybe they earn quite a lot of money, or maybe they're just the whole breadwinner, how that then kind of
impacts the relationship. Yeah, I think that's a massive problem. It could be a problem, you know, it's one of them things, but I can talk for days about this subject. Actually,
we need to wrap this up because we're right at the end.
Yeah, we are. We're trying to keep the episodes not too long. I think we tend to go rambling a little bit.
We could talk all day.
We could ramble.
I think we could go for 3 episodes long at this point.
And not get sick of it. I mean, I am talking to my best mate, so it's easy, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, we'll just go on. We'll just sit here with a coffee for 3 hours. Why not? But no, honestly, I think next episode we need to touch up on that.
Yeah.
Because it's really important. And I know 99.9% of people would love to hear what's the answer of them questions and different backgrounds of how people deal with that type of situation.
I'm excited.
But thank you so much for watching again and tuning in. But we'll see you next week.
We will definitely see you next week
with another question of the questions.
Hot topic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.